welcome to the third CoinGecko virtual meetup, and thank you for taking your time to join us. For those who don't know, CoinGecko is the world's leading crypto data aggregator, and we pride ourselves as being an independent and neutral data provider in the crypto space. Our market data is being used by some of the biggest brands out there, and we have a pretty comprehensive set of token and market data. I am TM Lee, co-founder at CoinGecko, and I will be moderating this session today. To set some context on the topic today, most people normally equate blockchain with finance. After all, one of the biggest use case of blockchain is Bitcoin, where you can send money in a peer-to-peer way, and also some sort of a decentralized store of wealth. And as the years go by, more and more people start to experiment, and they wonder, like, could you use blockchain to build games, right? So this could be representing game items or game currencies on the blockchain. And I'm sure you remember CryptoKitties sort of took the space by storm in 2017 and 2018. And with all this different experimentation, one of the key questions is, where are we right now in blockchain games since, when most of the NFT were launched, and also what will happen 5 years from now. And that's exactly the topic that we'll be discussing today. So we have 3 awesome speakers with us here today. So we got Roham, CEO of Dapper Labs. So for those of you who don't know what Dapper Labs is, they are known for the creator of CryptoKitties, and they are also building a new blockchain called Flow. And we also have Sandeep from COO of Matic Network, which is a layer 2 scaling solution on top of Ethereum using Plasma and Proof of Stake, which is of course good news for game developers. And Aleksander Larsen, which is COO of Axie Infinity, which is a blockchain-based game launched back in 2018. I kind of think of it like a Pokemon where you could breed and battle together. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
So maybe let's start off with a quick introduction and sort of an origin story. Perhaps how you first discovered Bitcoin and somehow found your way into getting involved in the blockchain game industry. Maybe we can start with Alex, and then the rest can chime in later.
Sure. So thank you, and I'm really happy to be here to represent Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis. So as we said, yeah, my name is Aleksander. I've actually been on and off in crypto for quite some time, but I really got massively involved in about the middle of 2017. And then it was actually CryptoKitties, like I think many other who were interested in games, kind of was the catalyst for like this massive interest. So Ethereum is cool, Bitcoin is cool, but I was always a gamer, and I always wanted to explore. Like I was always interested in trading game assets. So CryptoKitties was a really interesting fit, and I thought that NFTs would probably change the ways that we play games. So actually, our team in Axie Infinity, we initially met together playing CryptoKitties, and we thought it was amazing. And then eventually wanted to go off on our own and kind of make our own game. And then it evolved massively from there until we are now here today, where we're a 25-man team. And we're now looking at some very interesting problems, which still hasn't really been solved. So my background is from business, and I was a manager in the Norwegian state before blockchain. I also did a lot of esports related stuff and played competitive games my entire life. So yeah, that's very much me.
That's good.
If you want, I can jump in here. I'm Roham, founder and CEO of Dapper Labs. How I got into Bitcoin was back in 2013. So at my previous company, I started Axiom Zen in 2012. My current CTO, Dieter, joined us in 2013. He had been mining Bitcoin since the early days and sort of introduced me to the concept. I have to admit, I didn't immediately get it as an investment opportunity, but we did try to build games on top of Bitcoin as early as 2014. And obviously that confirmation times and transaction fees made that it was an interesting experiment. So since then we did buy some Bitcoin at that point, and then sort of just put most of our ideas on hold until we saw the wave of apps being built on top of Ethereum in 2017, and then started sort of just with CryptoKitties. The goal was to say, we look at all these ICO white papers, and we know that what they're promising is not possible. Given the state of the technology. So how can we build something that is possible given the state of the technology? And we had to write the ERC 721 standard first, and then sort of build CryptoKitties kind of on top of that. And as Aleksander was saying, there's a lot of problems we didn't foresee and have been spending the last 2 years fixing, or at least finding ways around. So that's the quick story. And the reason we built CryptoKitties was both sort of a demonstration of what was possible, but also the idea that these concepts are world changing. The idea of owning your own assets, the idea of being in the driver's seat of your own digital world. But they're so hard to explain to people from a sort of financial context. It's just so much easier to say, hey, come in and play with these little things. And you learn over time that you have more control over them than you ever did on your Facebook profile or your or even your Chase Bank account. So that's my little spiel.
Thank you. Sandeep, I think your microphone is off.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think everybody has a CryptoKitties connection, and funnily we also had something similar. So everybody loves Ethereum, and we were also very active, like as developers, as techies. We were very active in the blockchain space, and right around that time, Ethereum was peaking in its popularity and all. And then this, game came along, like CryptoKitties or like kind of NFT collectibles. And then, we all know what happened to the Ethereum, Ethereum network for an entire week. I think it was choked. And then, everybody, like it was, the writing was in the wall that Ethereum is not ready for adoption. And then people who have been following and know Ethereum, development stages and all that, they know that, even like it's around at least 1.52 years from now where we'll be able to actively see sharding and other kind of scalability this thing. So and then at that time it looked even more further, like we are already 2.5 years from that time. And we realized that we realized that we also want to work in the scalability area. And then our founder of Matic Network, my fellow co-founder Jayanti, he was one of the core team members, or core the research group, the independent research group. He was the one who first built the Plasma MVP implementation. And that time Vitalik and Joseph Poon, they were very closely involved with the project. So we were not happy with some of the things. We thought that this is very difficult for the developers to build on top of it. So we, kind of created a new or a different way of building the layer 2. So we actually wanted to support smart contracts also on layer 2 rather than only simple transfers. So that's where the journey for Matic Network started. We created an entity, and rest is like is history. And it's been like 2-3 years, and I think we have got. I think we're one of the largest adoption from the third-party developers. Right now, like some projects, scalability projects would be there, but most of the applications that are being built are either like funded by the core foundation itself and things like that. So from our side, we have got a lot of adoption from the third-party developers, which is very promising for me. And hopefully we expect to have larger and larger games on our platform, and slowly and steadily provide that scalability on Ethereum itself, like which I think 95% of all the developers, blockchain developers, are Ethereum developers, and our mission is to provide them the scalability on Ethereum itself. So yeah, that's kind of our story.
Got it. So thank you guys for the intro and the origin story. I guess I would like to start off with the first question will be on the current state of blockchain games. So CryptoKitties, back in 2017, 2018, lots of people finally realized that people are really interested in playing some sort of a game using blockchain. And then after that, there's this ICO boom, and people start doing some fundraising with NFTs. And I think, although it feels really, really long, it's just been about 2 to 3 years ago. Obviously, there's been a lot of things, a lot of development that has happened in the last 2-3 years, and a lot of things have changed as well compared to then and today. So perhaps you could share with everyone here, what do you think is the current state of blockchain games? Like, have we been making a lot of progress, or has it all been just hype, or do we have to wait for a killer use case, killer game that would make it mainstream? What's your take on this on a game development standpoint, entrepreneurship standpoint? I'm sure each of you will have different opinion or view on this. Anyone? Or otherwise,
I'm happy to.
Yeah. Okay. Please go ahead, Roham. Please.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'll give kind of a quick answer, and then we can sort of workshop it a little bit. From our perspective, there was immediately after CryptoKitties lots of clones, right? Like different people, crypto celebrities and crypto countries and crypto puppies and whatever it is. And I think people were just trying to replicate the same model, which was frankly really hard given the transaction fees, given the sort of congestion on the network, and not a lot of those things had any sort of staying power. And I think teams like Axie came along where they're actually taking a much more holistic approach, building a thing that has a real community around it. And there's several of those, I think, great teams that have built interesting projects over the last 2 years, dealing with high gas fees, making scalability solutions that are in progress and getting better and better, but still it's not like a ready-made solution of here's Unity, here's Stripe, go kind of thing. So everyone's been working really hard, I think, and creating what is, if you go inside, Axie's Discord, or you see how the Axie owners talk about their assets, or even look at CryptoKitties retention 2.5 years after launch, like that core community is still there, super excited, and there's been a resurgence of NFTs, etc. But I think that we're kind of at the precipice of scalability solutions getting much better, on-ramps getting much better, sort of hopefully hundreds of millions of people getting access to cryptocurrency with Libra and Link and Kakao and all those sort of social networks coming online. And then scalability solutions that I think are, from other blockchains to Flow to, the work Matic is doing, that are just readier for sort of the next generation of interactions and kind of, I think we've built this core community and it's still small, but it's now ready to bring 10 million others and sort of like show them just how different it is. And I think a lot of people that come to CryptoKitties now, and especially now that we have credit card integration, most of them are not crypto people. For crypto people, CryptoKitties was sort of a 2017, 2018 thing. But they get it and they go through the funnel. They end up buying ETH. They end up actually becoming crypto holders. And I think having a higher level understanding of sort of the why behind decentralization than the people that come to get rich on the crypto exchanges. So that's my read, and that we're about to go into another sort of step function change where both the ideas that people have and the possibilities, the infrastructure is kind of ready to go to the next level.
I think I would agree significantly with what Rohan said, but kind of taking you guys back a little bit in terms of the journey that we went on. We started very decentralized in a way where like all the battles were everything was on chain, and then we kind of progressively started centralizing things a little bit. And then we attempted to scale actually using Loom Network. And I think that actually illustrates some of the risks that are in this industry. Because when you are a developer or you create a blockchain game, if you're actually allying yourself with a third party, you are not only dependent on your own technology working, but also theirs. So in our case, that didn't really work out as well as we had hoped. Loom Network, of course, they're doing something totally different now than we kind of had expected. So I think that's a big risk. But of course, on the technical side, there are still things that haven't really improved. Ethereum obviously does not work for gaming at larger scale in terms of gas costs, and we're seeing that in our game, similar to CryptoKitties, where a lot of the things still are on chain. And then, of course, on the game design side, it's a different thing as well. So a lot of the teams that started out, like there's been this learning process where you need to really understand like how difficult it is to build a game using blockchain technology in terms of UI, UX, also economic like design and like incentive design. So how do you make sure that people are not only working it from a point of, okay, we want to make money, there has to be some intrinsic motivation as well. Like you find it funny, you find the game like pleasing to play. So I think that's kind of where we are today. A lot of the early teams, they're getting to a point where we learn some things, and now, but still the technology is still not quite ready. But I think like we're going to see some big changes over the next year probably.
Yep. I think Axie team has been a pioneer in the space, and they have been trying to build a decentralized kind of game from the from the 2017 days, where like kind of the scalability. I would call it like a mini revolution in itself, that everybody was working on scalability started back in 2017, and I think they've fought hard their ways and still have been able to provide a decent gamer interface, a gamer experience using Axie by various methods, like on their game. But I think he's very right in saying that especially at that point in time, I think they were very, very early in the game, and I think it's perfectly he's spot on by saying that you actually are multiplying your risks, right? So that's why the proven platforms are very important, and that's especially where we feel that Ethereum and kind of layer 2s, which are more evolved, like Matic network was. I'm speaking from my behalf also. I think that the solutions like this, which will have a large amount of third-party developers building, not like as I said, that not like the only development happening from inside. And then again, there were a lot of design related things which might have created problems with Loom in those days. So I think if the overall architecture is elegant, and the system built is robust, which actually can be only proven, especially like a player like Axie, over the time only. Like every solution will say that theirs is a better solution and all that. But I think now is the time, and I want to finish with what Roham said, that now is the time where infrastructure is getting ready, right? And one thing that I see from a lot of blockchain games now, because due to the last like kind of tough times that we have had, because everybody was building the infrastructure and none of the solutions were actually really ready. But due to the experience, many games, when I go to the gaming conferences and all that, many games have now realized, and they are now thinking that, okay, do our player really need this level of decentralization? Why can't we simply have deposits and withdrawals of the assets, and then we keep everything inside, right? But so two things on that. One is that, as Roham was saying, that the infrastructure is now getting ready. So now is not the time. Like if people had pivoted, let's say 1 year back, into saying that, okay, let's have a centralized kind of setup for now, and then let's do only repository withdrawals, that might have been a better scenario. But now when the solutions are getting ready, and in few, let's say 4 to 5, 6 months, I think many solutions will be robust enough, tested enough. I think now is the time where the original vision of the decentralized games, like where even the team which has the game, which is the kind of builder of the game, can't even can't freeze your assets and things like that. I think now is the time when we can actually build better experiences with that kind of structure and decentralized model in mind. And I think the games now that are coming up, there is a possibility that games who have achieved some amount of success now, and they going into a centralized kind of mode, while the infrastructure is getting ready and it's around the corner. I think the games the game should evaluate that whether at this point in time it makes sense to go into a centralized mode, or we have the infrastructural solutions ready, for which they have fought for the last 1.5, 2 years, and see that they can provide those experiences with the decentralization. The solution
so to build on that, right? So from what I understand from you guys, building games on a blockchain is challenging. There's a lot of things that you do not foresee when you get in 2-3 years ago, and even now in terms of the technology itself, is only starting to get ready, right? With the scalability solution and with new blockchains that might solve this problem. But I'm also curious that if anyone were to come in today to build games on the blockchain, given all these different challenges, what would be who would be the audience for these games? Because if it's back in 2018, during the hype, there is a chance that crypto would have taken off. So any games that were built using blockchain may be able to ride that trend. Of course, fast forward today, the trend has kind of tapered off a little bit. So if you were to build a game on blockchain, are your audience the mainstream gamers looking to play some fun games and then somehow be able to own the asset for real on the blockchain? Or are you targeting crypto natives, people who really understand what Bitcoin is, what Ethereum is, and then they're looking to play some games while in the crypto land? So given all these set of challenges, then how is your go-to-market strategy, and who are the audiences that would adopt the game? Just right there, yeah.
I mean, I think this actually ties a little bit into what Sandeep was mentioning too. So in terms of game design, like the question is really like, how decentralized do you have to make it, right? Like, where is the real value for the user? What is the benefit that they truly get from playing these kind of games? And in our opinion, right, so what we believe in is making a traditional type of game with hybrid blockchain type of things inside it. And I think actually we talked about this briefly before the panel actually went online too, where Roham mentioned some things with their strategy for NBA Top Shot. And I think that to kind of mention what we're doing in Axie, right? What we believe in now is making a traditional player journey with kind of free-to-play aspects of it, and then onboarding these users eventually onto the blockchain, so that they can first experience like the fun of the game, and then take a deeper dive, and then realize, okay, this is actually a broader ecosystem. There is a lot of opportunities here where I can potentially like play to earn and really experience the benefits of what is supposed to be a blockchain game. Not all the hassle, like you need to own these assets, etc. Like that kind of stuff. The more you focus on that and the decentralized aspect of it, the more players you're going to lose initially, while you might capture more in terms of the crypto natives and all that kind of stuff. But I believe that that's a false narrative. Like, I don't necessarily think that it's possible to grow inside this niche that we are in. We need to expand the bubble. We need to make it so that the people can start to onboard into these like fun experience, whether that be Axie, NBA Top Shot for like for sports people, and then they can kind of move into the art space, or from Axie to other type of games. Like, that's the real thing that I think that all game developers should be focusing on right now.
Yep, I think yeah. From like what I was also mentioning, building a decentralized kind of experience on the game. So I absolutely don't mean that you make the gaming experience suffer in any particular form. Like maybe introducing the users to the crypto side of things early on. I didn't mean that. The idea is to have like as Aleksander mentioned, that getting the users, getting them like create a game which is actually fun to play, and then onboard users and slowly show them the larger experience. And he summarizes it beautifully. I mean, I think that's like gamifying your onboarding to the blockchain, right? So you are playing something and then you gamify the onboarding to the blockchain side of things. So my focus was more on then once you are onboarding them onto the blockchain side of things, the blockchain side of thing infrastructure. I was saying that now you can have you can have keys for the actual users, and you can actually mint the assets to their addresses directly, rather than having those assets inside a central servers, and then only when they ask for a withdrawal, because that kind of conflicts with their, like, if some of them we are exciting them towards blockchain and all that, and they start reading about it, and then they realize that okay, most of those things are not applicable, even though I have a not applicable here. So that kind of things I'm saying that there we can afford to be more decentralized now, because those gas costs and transaction costs are not available, it's possible to bypass those things using these scalability solutions. And there we should give a more of a kind of a true experience to this once we are onboarding them. Of course, UI UX and the gameplay remains the priority over there also.
Got it. Roham, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely second what has been said, but maybe give a couple of examples specifically with NBA. We believe very strongly that collectibles by themselves, I mean, even physical collectibles, all have some sort of functionality. And so when you're talking about going to millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users, I think functionality of the digital asset is important to them. And so is the social context. So if I have a painting or a sneaker, the painting I can put on my wall, the sneaker I can put on my shelf, I know how to show it off. How do I show off NFTs? What's the social context? And so when we do sort of user research, those two things are very important. But then when you talk about sort of marketing to these users, they get really excited about the benefits of blockchain, as in buy and sell these items, real money trading on the marketplace, like the click-through rates, the conversion rates, the NBA fans we talk to get super excited. When you tell them these are blockchain assets, literally 386%, well, you get 386% more better, we get 386% better conversion when we speak about the benefits rather than speaking about the technology or decentralization or blockchain or kind of crypto or anything like that. It sort of scares people. But why does the thing being on chain matter? Going back to functionality, going back to social context. When the thing is on chain, other developers can build on top of it much easier. You know, platform risk has come up a bunch of times with Loom, etc. But that's the reality of, you know, CryptoKitties today. Why are they cool? Well, because you can go check them out in basically any wallet. You can trade them on any marketplace. You can take them into the various, you know, Decentraland and crypto voxels and whatever it is. It's that sort of social context that makes it bigger than just, you know, a picture on a website. And I think that that's really, really important when we start going to mainstream, also to mainstream developers. But to the customer, it doesn't really matter. They think of it more as, I can do more things with my stuff, rather than my stuff is decentralized or it's sort of on a you know, it's open source or whatnot. I think over time they will realize it, right? Because over time they'll realize that, wow, this thing never goes away. It's been like 3-4 years and I can still sell it. Like that's different than anything digital has ever been. So, you know, I think it's a you know, you're sort of selling different value props to different groups of people at different points in their user journey. I think it's way too much to sort of upfront tell them, hey, we're changing the internet, and this is the whole, you know, we're changing. You're part of a, you know, broader movement to make the world more open. When they just want to have fun, they want to interact with their friends in a different way. They want to sort of just, you know, at the end of the day, they want to, it's entertainment, right? So that's a big focus here. But absolutely, mainstream audiences care about this stuff. And you know, when you talk to sort of brand experts, sort of the people that manage the fan relationships, they just can't wait to get this sort of empowerment in the hands of their communities.
So if you create a game and you sort of sell the blockchain story from the start, you're going to capture a certain user and maybe you end up like CryptoKitties where the assets stick around for a while. And then I think it was also brought up that, you know, you start with a game where blockchain is sort of like hidden to sort of like slowly onboard the user onto the game and then into the blockchain. But I'm just curious, if that's the case, why don't most game company that are looking into blockchain, why not they just focus on building the game without blockchain and get some traction? And then once your game hits a certain traction, then introduce a blockchain layer after that. So you can think of it like, say, perhaps Animal Crossing, you know, they have a currency in there and whatnot, and these are all centralized. And they could potentially use blockchain if they want to sort of like put all these assets and make it, you know, tradable and stuff like that. But obviously in the context of a large game company, there is not much incentive to do that because you want to sort of have a lock-in experience for the users itself, and you want to control the economy of the items. You don't want people to play your game and solely to make money. I think World of Warcraft or one of the games had some issue where they sort of like control all these marketplaces. So which route makes sense? Like, would it make sense for a game development company to focus on the game and then look into blockchain later on? But then again, if they were to look into it, that will also defeat the purpose of a lock-in ecosystem. So do you have any opinion on that as a game development company?
Yeah, Roham,
I mean, I can give a kind of a quick one, and then feel free to jump in. My quick answer would just be that you said it, right? Like the current game, the current way they're building games works, and it's this closed economies. You know, they adding a open economy element in there, as I think Aleksander alluded to, breaks the economy design, and so you can't really sort of jam it in after the fact. You sort of have to think about it before the fact. And a big piece of it is, you know, at the end of the day, if I'm making money out of a game, I need to be providing valuable services to someone else in that economy. And so you need this idea of sort of creators and consumers and players, but also providers. And you can't sort of like you can't retrofit that into an existing into most existing economies. Into some you should be able to. So we have, one of our lead game designers is from EVE Online. That's probably the most famous sort of centralized open economy game. Another one of our game designers was, literally anthropology lecturer at Stanford. So like you kind of have to think about this stuff from the ground up, and that's what we help a lot of the established gaming companies that we work with, is sort of looking at the future implications of their token economy, essentially decisions. But the power for a bigger company or for an existing brand is freaking massive, because what is blockchain other than a sort of value layer to connect an existing community? And so if you have an existing community that's in our case with CryptoKitties, it was the Ethereum community, and this was a new way for them to sort of interact together. In our case with the NBA, it's the basketball fan community, the basketball collector community, and the crypto community all sort of coming around, all coming around together. But for an existing game, if you think about, you have a player base, you have an IP, this is essentially injecting and creating a new type of value, a new type of asset based on that IP. And then you also have a reach to other third-party developers, and you can sort of create an ecosystem, create a platform out of your own IPs, your own apps. I think that's the right way for these game companies to think about it, because they're all trying to be platforms anyway. And a platform has platform risk. So either you need to be big enough that nobody cares about your platform risk, like your Fortnite, and people will build there, even though they know you can cut them out. Or you can do something like blockchain and say, well, look, I'm a small little guy, but if you build on top of me, I can't cut you off. And so people automatically almost, there's zero risk to building on top of you, and so they do, as we sort of saw at a small scale with CryptoKitties. So I think of it more as they're going to have to build new kinds of experiences, and then those new kinds of experiences have new benefits that their sort of centralized counterparts just don't. Because to mod a centralized game, you sort of take it, you mod it, and then it's a totally separate thing that adds no value back to the original community.
Got it. Yeah, Alex, you want to add something?
Yeah, so I have I think a good example of a team that I think is doing it right, or doing it in the right way. So Ember Sword, those of you who might not have heard of it, it's a smaller game development studio out of Denmark. They are more or less developing a brand new, like a MMO RPG, I would say. And like the fundamental like game design, all that stuff is more in terms of like integrating crypto in a specific way, but they're still so early, and that they are just like not really looking into the tech at a deeper level. So that's one way of doing it, where you simply like go on the game design route, and you have, let's say, venture funding, people behind you if you're an established studio. I think that's probably going to be the right path. And so you can rather tap into these like ecosystems that will emerge in terms of infrastructure and scaling over the coming, I would say, year or 2 years. And probably that I think is the safer play. Alternatively, you can try to like go into the pre-sale route, I would say, where you start selling NFTs or assets more so in a pre-sale, and that requires a totally different kind of mindset from the beginning. So there are positive things and bad things about that too, right? You can start building a community because you get people who are interested in paying attention to what you're doing because they have an economic incentive, right? You guys to do good. But then again, that's also a lot of pressure, and it's not necessarily that all game companies really like developing things in that way. So it's kind of a give and take here, depending on the economy of the game company, I would say, and the scale of what it is that you're trying to create.
All right. So maybe I'll segue a little bit to a different topic. So we've been talking about game development in general, and I think there's one key topic that we sort of, which is quite obvious to blockchain game, but we never really discussed about it, which is a non-fungible token, NFT. So CryptoKitties was one of the good example of a NFT-based game, and then Axie has an NFT as well. And then slowly you see almost every game has some form of an NFT to represent items, assets, land, and this NFT is also used for funding purposes, speculation, which also helps to bring some audience into the game. So I guess the question is, how is NFT still very much involved in the blockchain game space today? Because I'm seeing that there's a lot of NFT used for art, there's used for ENS, it's being used for land, and there could be more and more other use cases. So it's starting to deviate away from game. But within the gaming industry itself, it's what does the NFT space kind of look like? Like, do we still need it, or do you start to see games using like tokens or other form of, or whether a smart contract based game would be sufficient without like NFT? Even for like mainstream game to adopt, they only adopt like the token side, but not the non-fungible token side of things. Maybe Roham, you want to start off?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I'm just smiling because we had a lot of these conversations in the early days when we were making the ERC, when we were writing the non-fungible token standard, and this idea that most things in life are actually non-fungible, right? Like other than your money and sort of if you invest in commodities, but everything else is non-fungible. Your friends, your information, your clothes, basically everything in your house, that like the story of the thing matters as much as the thing. So it's just the odd world where in the blockchain world, almost everything is fungible and everyone tries to make everything into a currency. But I think like as you go towards more and more mainstream applications, I think people will call them just tokens, and those are non-fungible tokens, and then currencies, because or potentially kind of fungible tokens or whatnot. Because I think if you think about tickets, if you think about real estate, if you think about sort of once everything does eventually become tokenized, and it'll start in virtual worlds, all of those things are technically non-fungible tokens, and their ownership history matters as much as the individual difference between them. And when you add sort of complexity or when you add diversity, it just makes the whole economy more interesting. And so, I mean, even when I'm seeing things people are doing with social currencies, I think it's really cool. But I think it's way cooler for communities to have collectible economies together and sort of the art trading that's going on. So my bet is you're going to see the non-fungible part of non-fungible tokens actually kind of non-fungible tokens will be so normal that they'll be more common than sort of currencies and whatnot, once we kind of start seeing real applications and real usage of those applications.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel the same. I think the NFT, non-fungible tokens is a very larger concept, and it's a very fundamental concept basically. And anything, like as Roham was explaining, that anything that is unique and you have the true ownership of that, on blockchain can be called NFT, right? So I think that it's a fundamental concept and it's going to stay here. It's like it's like as fundamental as, let's say, a currency or things like that. So I think it's going to stay here, and as Roham was saying that more and more things will be converted in the form of NFTs, and it's a very good insight, Roham, that eventually we'll have more of NFTs rather than these currencies and honestly people call shit coins, right? So rather than that, you'll have more of tangible usage NFTs. And also people are innovating on top of NFTs also, like for example the engine coins ERC1155, right? I'm not sure what do we exactly call, do we have a name for it or not? It's a collection of NFTs. So I think that kind of experimentation will also keep evolving, and then we'll maybe just like ERC1155, we'll have more such forms of such tokens. But at the end of the day, the fundamental concept remains the same, that there is something that is unique. It might be rare also, and it truly belongs to somebody. Yeah. So I think that's going to stay. Yeah. And more real world possibilities of ownerships of these unique assets will be modeled onto the blockchains eventually.
Yeah, I think you guys have touched on it kind of as rounding that off a little bit. I think that NFTs are the perfect vehicle for your digital identity, whether that be like real life achievements or like eventually down the line. Like at first, what's happening now is people are building their digital identities through games and dApps, and like all of that belong to the person or the individual doing that. And then they can bring that with them, not necessarily like as they have use cases in other games or other ecosystems, but still like maybe you can get like a small note that you have this asset, right? That's pretty massive from like closed gardens. And then you can kind of look at it from like, what are NFTs in games right now? So Axies, for example, they are being used as work tokens. So in a sense, like the easiest comparison would be worker bees. So if you have worker bees, or like they can collect the honey in Axie, if you have worker bees, you can collect basically other type of tokens, which are ERC20. So for example, we've been giving away DAI from MakerDAO, and also KNC from Kyber Network, who are our partners, distributing assets inside our game. And then you have like this whole play to earn concept. And that kind of segues into like what is actually sustainable inside of these like gaming ecosystems, right? So you can't really like for maybe when you have 1,500 or 2,000 players, sure, you can make some smaller rewards, but like giving away so much, it has to come from somewhere. And I think that's a lot of where the experimentation is happening now under the hood. So some of these game companies are trying to figure out, hey, what do we actually have to do to make a sustainable economy inside the game, and try to give back to the people who are not only our players, but also in a sense stakeholders and participants of a network or ecosystem that we are creating. So I just think it's truly exciting. There are so many fronts that like the innovation is happening at the same time, and we haven't even like touched on art, which is also massive. So yeah, it's just like a massive answer to the general question.
Right. So I'm currently going to take a few questions from the audience, and there's this one here by Boolean X. So to summarize, the question is about interoperability between games. So I think one of the selling point for blockchain games in the past was that you can have a NFT game item that could be brought into different game platforms. So one example would be the CryptoKitties Kittyverse, where you could bring the CryptoKitties into Decentraland, CryptoVoxel, and I think there was supposed to be a SDK or something that you could build like CryptoKitty games on top of that. And then we also start to see there's a lot of different kinds of blockchain coming up that has interoperability as well. I think Flow is one example, Ethereum, Polkadot, and stuff like that. So is the dream of interoperability between games still the narrative for blockchain games? And how would it look like in a world where you have multiple chains, maybe talking to each other, maybe not? And also, will the assets be transferred around? Like, I know this is sort of like looking to the future, but do you think that this is one of the possible future we'll be in? And is this good for the whole gaming industry as a whole? To me, I think it's kind of good because it's like an open ecosystem. But yeah, this is one of the questions posted on the technical hurdles, and is there anything preventing this vision from becoming practical, rather? Perhaps maybe Roham or Alex want to start? Roham?
Yeah, I'm happy to dive in. I think the challenge with sort of multiverse, the way people normally think about it, well, the way you would sort of the first order way to assume it, like, hey, I have a sword, I can take it into any game I want. Like the problem there is game design, right? Like how are you going to take the sword into a World War II game? And what that if you think about it very sort of like literally, then you see with those sort of issues. But I don't think that that's the right way to think about it. I think there's sort of two ways to think about it. One is, it's sort of extensibility, as in I put a product out there and others can build on top of it. Not all products will work with all products, but it's sort of much easier to create ecosystems around. Every product is an ecosystem. Every app is a platform. That's sort of how I think about it on a small scale. And so if you're an independent developer, you can recreate a potential product from scratch, or you can add a little thing to an existing community, make a little bit of money, learn, do it much faster, and sort of and kind of do that again. So that's maybe one way to think about it. The other way to think about the metaverse is much bigger than just games, and it's the idea of if I own my own identity, if I own my own assets, and if I have access to decentralized marketplaces where I can always flip my assets for anything else, and there's always a liquid market for sort of the things I don't want, in trying to get to the things I do want. Then that goes well beyond games, right? That's the idea that if I'm in Facebook and I don't like Facebook, I should be able to take my friends with me, take it into a different interface, and still access the same social graph. If I have a bunch of assets in one, like if I don't like CryptoKitties.com, so lots of people in China actually play CryptoKitties through someone else's interface that hits our smart contract directly. And they're just much better at sort of, they host their stuff locally in China, and so it's much faster, and than our website, and we didn't even know this until recently. So things like that are very cool, where I can like leave this centralized service, go to that centralized service, and take my stuff with me. I think that's a very powerful expression of the metaverse. And for a user, it sort of maps a little bit to how our physical lives are, right? Like I can take my stuff out of a particular, I can choose to go to different physical locations. I can take me and my own stuff with me. There's nothing that, whatever it is, Safeway has over. I mean, they can give me points, they can give me stuff to come to their places, but they don't have me in lock-in. That's how I think about the metaverse. It's the idea that consumers should be able to move around digitally with complete freedom, and developers should be able to build tools anywhere in that user journey. But it's still sort of up to people to make the decisions and be free to choose whatever they want to choose.
Yeah, I think I would agree with a lot of what you just said there, Roham. But for us in Axie, I think that the biggest value add actually comes from the community who are building other games on top of basically our NFTs. So I think like CryptoKitties realize that NFTs are open, permissionless, and it's a perfect way for people to start building on top of them. Like they can start experimenting, and that was really great to see. And then we've also seen some interesting things happen where, like, as I said, they are permissionless assets. So other games sometimes add value for our Axies inside of their games, which have a totally different universe. I think that's totally fine, but not necessarily something that we want to that we like are too concerned with right now, because that's just a minor integration. And I think that is kind of the crucial thing in terms of a metaverse, right? So if you think about like this metaverse that everyone is dreaming about, right, where you can draw in an asset from CryptoKitties, from Axie, from let's say some kind of Blizzard game or something totally different, like another IP, there has to be some person inside that game or some entity who is actually balancing all of these like these assets out. So how powerful is one thing? Why is it that's worth something else? And if that's not done in the correct way, then you suddenly end up with a system which doesn't really make much sense, where some asset might be worth way too much, right, in that metaverse. So I think we're still a long way from seeing something like that work. And I actually believe that it has to be created by someone who is insanely rich already when we have the infrastructure available, because then that person can maybe like be a more fair judge. And I think that's very hard right now. So yeah.
Yeah, so I was also like, when Roham was talking, I was actually remembering a joke that somebody shared when we were in a gaming conference, that, when you have a AK-47 from, let's say, some particular game which is built today, and then you take that, AK-47 into, like, let's say something like Assassin's Creed, where people are still fighting with the sword, like what happens to the usability of that, of those assets? So that, the kind of interoperability is not that straightforward. And as Aleksander was saying, I have also thought that maybe in a longer term, like some of the bigger players of the space, they might come together, and ideally they should, and then maybe create like a standard or something like that, where some generic assets could be there, which becomes like a bedrock for multiple thousands of such games could be built on top of it. So maybe not one guy, but a consortium of, let's say, top gaming companies alongside the blockchain companies, and can come up with a standard for these assets, which can be used interoperably. But again, because gaming involves a lot of imaginations and new kinds of things, so you can't possibly, have every different kind of assets listed on that standard, which will have, let's say, powers related to it, or, a lot of things like could be there with that, right? So I'm not sure how it could be done, but if something that like that could be done, then we can have a massive number of applications who can have interoperability. Some of the like one attempt that I've seen till now is is the game company called Quarters. So I think it's the world's first SEC approved gaming currency. They're called Pocket Full of Quarters. They are building on Matic actually. So what they have built is it's not interoperability, to be honest. Like, they've built one particular kind of currency, which follows all the compliance standards and all that, and then their community is building multiple small games based on that currency, and that currency has few kind of exotic features to it. So something like that could be possible. Or what Roham also was saying, and I really like that insight that every every game is like a platform. If a game like I see that Axie could be that game also, like for example, we interact with a lot of people from the Axie team to kind of get some let's say small community kind of built games, using hackathons and things like that. We've been discussing on those lines for a long time, and have multiple games where external third parties are building using Axie's kind of assets. So that can also be one mental model. And thanks, Roham, for mentioning that. That also gives a good mental model to think about it. Every game is potentially a platform if it grows beyond a particular size and has a big community. Can be.
Yeah. So I think like the future of blockchain game is most likely going to be an open platform if things goes well, and also on the technology standpoint, how every chain can talk to each other. Like if somebody uses like Matic network to put some NFT asset, can they bring that over to Flow? And stuff like that. So I think that remains an open question to some extent. So we're quickly running out of time, but I would like to probably maybe hear your thoughts on any sort of advice for developers or entrepreneurs who are coming into the space today, looking to build games on the blockchain. If there is one advice you would give them so that you could make their life easier, because it's something that you wish someone have told you, what would that be? So maybe we can start with Alex, Sandeep, and Roham. Yeah, what would be the advice for someone coming in right now? Yeah,
sure. So I think I mentioned it a little bit already. Like you need to make a pretty a decision if you want to start, like how integrated do you want your community to be, right? So are you having an NFT pre-sale or not, for example? And the moment that you start giving people assets or selling assets, that basically means you have a responsibility to these people. So that means that you function more as a public company, actually. So it's a massive learning experience, right? So how transparent do we have to be? So it's a totally different thing, right? Rather than let's say that you want to develop a thing until you have like an MVP and then show it out, right? So that would be my first piece of advice. Like make a strategy about community and make sure that if you're selling NFTs that you are coherent, like you keep doing the same thing over and over again, so that people don't get like angry and upset because you're doing one thing and you said you would do another. So yeah.
Massively stressful responsibility like that. Yeah, I mean, people are like behind you that, why is this not picking up value and all that, where you can't really do much with that, slowly and steadily with adoption. And it's actually there for, projects like us also. For example, we also have a listed token and all that. So it's a very tough, humbling and, very big responsibility when you have to, interact with the community. From my side, let me, give that advice, because otherwise, the two experts on the panel on the gaming side will talk me out of options. So my simple advice is that focus on building a good game first, and blockchain things can be added. You can build a very highly technical game which has all the best things about the blockchain implemented in it, but nobody wants to play it. That's of no use. So just build a good game and then maybe progressively add a blockchain. Yeah.
Thank you, Roham.
Yeah, I mean, the lesson of sort of keep it MVP is always important, but especially important here just because, like has been said, there's so much to build that it just blows out of control. I would definitely agree with, hey, respect your community. It is a really high responsibility to sell these things to people, and they are very vocal. So definitely respect the community. But start with user value, right? Like, what's the point? What's the reason you're using blockchain? What's sort of your North Star that you want your gamer, your player to feel? And if you tie everything to that, then you can also explain all of your decisions and hopefully kind of bring the community along with you. And then the last thing I would say is focus on ecosystems. Like this stuff is hard. There's a lot of work that needs to get done. There's a lot of education that needs to get done. And I think it's the sort of rising tide lifts all boats, in the sense of, your early players, treat them like early evangelists, treat them like ambassadors, treat them like, essentially community leaders. your platform players, treat them as like real partners that you're sort of tying your company's futures together to a certain extent, and then try to kind of, and we as Dapper Labs need to do a better job of this, of just helping out the entire community, no matter what. Like, it doesn't, if you're building on a layer 2, if you're building on Ethereum, like, great. At the end of the day, this is just, we need 1,000 times more people that are aware that this technology even exists for this reason, right? And so if we can collaborate with each other and sort of tell the lesson, right, let's make the pie, literally it can be 1,000 times, 10,000 times bigger. And then we can fight over kind of the pieces of it. That's I think my biggest sort of learning of the last year or so.
That's great. Yeah, so I think I learned a lot from you guys in this 1 hour session, and I'm sure our audiences will too. So I think that's all we have. And thank you to all of our speakers here. It's very great to get some of the shakers in the industry. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Roham. And also thank you everyone for joining us on our CoinGecko virtual meetup on the topic of blockchain games. And so before you guys go, here's a little bit of a good news. Everyone who have attended this meetup will get a $5 discount code on the CoinGecko store. Basically, you can spend, you can buy like a t-shirt like this, or there's a DeFi book or anything on store.coingecko.com. The discount code is CoinGecko and the number 5, CoinGecko 5, where you can purchase any CoinGecko merchandise. We will send you guys an email as well if you guys forget about it, but just go there and see if there's anything that you'd like to pick up. So with that, we conclude this meetup, and thanks everyone for your time. And I hope everybody learned something new today, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.